The Modady barely looked up when Daniel Carter stepped through the glass doors of Levant, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. Crystal chandeliers glowed softly overhead, reflecting off marble floors polished to a mirror shine. The low hum of conversation blended with the delicate clink of silverware and the muted notes of a live piano drifting from the corner. It was the kind of place where money spoke quietly but carried absolute authority. Daniel paused for a moment, adjusting the strap of his worn leather bag on his shoulder. Sheets. He wore a simple navy sweater, dark jeans, and clean but plainly styled shoes. No watch that screamed wealth, no tailored suit, no visible signs of belonging to the world inside those walls. Still, his posture was calm, his expression neutral, his eyes observant. He approached the podium. "Good evening," Daniel said politely. "Table for one. Reservation under Carter." The Modady, a tall man with perfectly combed hair and a practiced smile, tapped the screen in front of him without meeting Daniel's eyes. After a few seconds, he frowned. "I don't see that name," he said. Daniel nodded once. "It should be there, 7:30. The man finally looked up, his eyes scanning Daniel from head to toe in a way that was subtle enough to be deniable, but clear enough to sting. "I'm afraid we're fully booked this evening," the Modady said smoothly. "Perhaps you could try another time." Daniel glanced around. Several tables were empty. He'd noticed that immediately. "I don't mind waiting," he replied. "I was told there might be a short delay." The Modady's smile tightened. "Sir, this is a private dining establishment. Without a confirmed reservation, we can't accommodate walk-ins." Behind Daniel, the doors opened again. A white couple in designer coats stepped in, laughing softly. The Modady immediately brightened. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Harlan. Right this way." He didn't check the screen. He didn't ask for confirmation. He simply led them past Daniel, toward one of the empty tables. Daniel said nothing. He had learned long ago when silence was louder than protest. He stepped aside, standing near the wall as the Modady returned to his podium. Minutes passed. Another group entered. Then another. Eats was greeted warmly, ushered in with ease. Finally, Daniel spoke again. "Excuse me," he said calmly. "Could you check once more?" The Modady sighed, irritation flashing briefly across his face. "Sir, I've already explained. I understand," Daniel interrupted gently. "But I received a confirmation email. Perhaps there was an error." The man's eyes flicked to Daniel's bag. "We have a dress code," he said suddenly. "Business casual minimum." Daniel looked down at himself. "This is business casual." The Modady hesitated, then leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "This restaurant caters to a certain clientele. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable." Daniel met his gaze. "I'm not uncomfortable." A pause stretched between them. "Please step aside," the Modady said curtly. "You're blocking the entrance." Daniel stepped back. He could feel eyes on him now, curious glances from diners, whispers forming and dissolving like smoke. He recognized the sensation, the quiet isolation that came not from being alone, but from being unwelcome. After nearly 10 minutes, a hostess approached him. She was younger, her expression uncertain. "Sir," she said softly, "maybe there's a bistro down the street that would suit you better. Okay?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Thank you. I'll wait." Her cheeks flushed, and she retreated. Daniel leaned against the wall, his mind drifting not to anger, but to memory. He thought of his mother, who had cleaned offices late into the night so he could attend engineering school. He thought of the countless rooms he'd entered where expectations had been low and skepticism high. Thought of how often he'd been asked to prove himself before being allowed to exist. He didn't pull out his phone. He didn't raise his voice. He waited. Inside the dining room, the evening flowed on. Glasses were refilled. Plates arrived and disappeared. Laughter rose and fell. No one approached Daniel again. Until a sudden shout cut through the restaurant. A woman near the center of the room clutched her throat, eyes wide with panic. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor as she stood, knocking over her glass. "She can't breathe!" Someone yelled. Yeah, the piano stopped abruptly. Conversations died. The woman staggered, hands at her neck, face flushing a deep red. "Call Novacenta Z." Only a man shouted, the motto. D froze for half a second, then grabbed the phone. His hands shook as he spoke rapidly into the receiver. Daniel pushed off the wall instantly. He moved without hesitation, stepping into the dining room with purpose. "I'm trained," he said clearly. "Step back." Several people turned toward him, startled. One man frowned. "Who are you?" Daniel was already at the woman's side. "Ma'am, look at me," he said calmly. "Can you cough?" She shook her head, eyes filling with tears. Daniel positioned himself behind her, arms wrapping firmly around her abdomen. He performed the Heimlich maneuver with controlled precision, counting silently. On the third thrust, a piece of food flew free, clattering onto the marble floor. The woman gasped, collapsing forward as air rushed back into her lungs. She sobbed, clutching Daniel's arm. Applause broke out, scattered at first, then louder. "You saved her life," someone whispered. The Motadi stood frozen, phone dangling uselessly from his hand. Daniel helped the woman sit, speaking softly until her breathing steadied. Paramedics arrived moments later, ushered in by security. They took over, praising Daniel's quick action. "What's your name, sir?" one asked. "Daniel Carter," he replied. The paramedic nodded. "You did exactly the right thing." The woman looked up at him, tears streaking her makeup. "Thank you," she said hoarsely. "I don't know what would have happened if you weren't here." Daniel smiled gently. "I'm glad you're okay." As the paramedics led her away, the restaurant buzzed with nervous energy. The Motadi cleared his throat. "Sir," he said stiffly, "thank you for your assistance." Daniel turned toward him. "You're welcome." An awkward silence followed. Dang. A man in a tailored charcoal suit emerged from a private dining room near the back. His presence shifted the air immediately. Conversations hushed. Staff straightened. The owner. He surveyed the scene, his sharp eyes taking in the scattered chairs, the shaken guests, the paramedics near the exit. Then his gaze landed on Daniel. "What happened?" he asked. A diner spoke quickly. "That man saved a woman from choking." The owner raised his eyebrows. "Is that so?" He walked toward Daniel, extending his hand. "I'm Victor Levant." Daniel shook it. "Daniel Cotter." Victor studied him for a moment. "You're the reason she's alive." Daniel shrugged slightly. "Anyone with training would have done the same?" Victor smiled faintly, then turned to the Motadi. "Why wasn't he seated?" The Motadi swallowed. "There was no reservation, sir." "And what?" Victor asked quietly. The silence was answer enough. Victor looked back at Daniel. "Were you turned away?" Daniel met his eyes. Repeatedly. Victor exhaled slowly. "I apologize." He gestured toward the dining room. "Please, join us, any table you like." Daniel hesitated, not out of pride, but principle. "Thank you." "But I actually did have a reservation." Victor's eyes flicked to the podium. "Chet?" The Motadi fumbled with the screen, his face draining of color. It's here 7:30, Carter." Victor's expression hardened. Daniel spoke before the tension could snap. It's all right. Victor shook his head. No, it's not. Turned to the staff. Clear the private room. Several people gasped. That won't be necessary, Daniel said calmly. Victor smiled, a mixture of respect and regret. I insist, Daniel finally nodded. As he was led to the private dining room, diners watched with a mix of curiosity and shame. The same eyes that had dismissed him now followed his every step. Dinner passed quietly. The food was excellent, but Daniel barely tasted it. His mind replayed the evening not with bitterness, but clarity. He knew this moment would be remembered. He also knew it wouldn't change everything. At the end of the meal, Victor joined him. I owe you more than an apology, Victor said. And so does my staff. Daniel folded his hands. What you owe is reflection. Victor nodded slowly. You're right. Stu hesitated, then added, May I ask what you do, Mr. Carter? Daniel smiled faintly. I consult on corporate ethics and crisis management. My firm advises hospitality brands on inclusivity and bias training. Victor laughed softly, shaking his head. Of course you do. Daniel stood, picking up his bag. I appreciate the meal. Victor extended his hand again. I hope you'll come back. Daniel shook it. That depends. The next morning, headlines quietly circulated among industry circles. Man turned away from luxury restaurant, saves guest's life. Honor issues apology. After discriminatory incident, Victor Levant scheduled mandatory training for his entire staff. Daniel Carter moved on to his next client. Because for him, this wasn't about recognition. It was about reminding the world that dignity docenti were a uniform and heroism. Docenti asked for permission.